And so without further ado, I'll let Ruby introduce herself. And then after that, what we'll do is we'll have each of the people in attendance just give a quick introduction about themselves. Just, your name, what intrigued you about this workshop, and kind of what is your fascination with the tech industry? Or are you currently working in the tech industry, or, are you looking to get into it? Kind of what your, I guess, career status is in that respect. So I'll go ahead and let Ruby introduce herself right now.
Okay, let me share my screen, so then I'll start introducing myself, and then we'll give everyone a chance to introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with the PowerPoint. Let me know when you guys can see my screen.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So yeah, like Fayaz said, today we're going to be talking about the C# and Azure Cloud class. And then we'll get into sort of a bit of logistics, sort of what it entails of, and things like that. So just a bit about me. So I'm Ruby. I'm the instructor that teaches the class. So I have my bachelor's in computer science from the University of Washington, and then I have my MBA. And then I've worked at Groupon before as a software engineer, and then currently I work at T-Mobile as a software engineer. I've taught the C# and Azure Cloud, so this is going to be the second time we offer it. So I just finished up a cohort. And it went great. We had students that came, like some people knew coding, some people didn't know coding at all. And at the end of the class, everyone was able to complete sort of their capstone, their main project, and everyone was ready for interviews and sort of grabbing that C# development job. So it went pretty well. And fun fact about me, I can speak 4 languages. So yeah, I guess now we can go on to sort of everyone else. So kind of just tell us your name, your education history, your background, your work history, sort of why you're attending today's workshop. Are you sort of looking into getting into C# development jobs? Sort of what's your route? And then maybe like a fun fact about yourself. And then be sure to post your email in the chat just so that we can reach out to you after the workshop.
Awesome, thank you, Ruby. So it looks like Jordan right now, you're the only one here for the time being. Would you like to just give a quick introduction about yourself?
Oh man, I didn't realize I was the only one here. So I am. My name is Jordan Wenta. I'm located down kind of near Tacoma, and I'm currently active duty Air Force. So I'm looking to get out here in the next 250 days. So like 8 months, I think. That's where it's about at. And I've done a little bit of like I guess at work, I've done a little bit of PowerShell and Visual Basic and stuff like that. And in my free time, Python. I've taken a couple courses in Python for college and a C# course. I'm in a SQL course right now. I'm kind of just looking to kind of network and learn more about, be better, learn more things. I actually went to another Code Tacoma meeting this morning and have a little bit more homework here to figure out. So yeah, I'm kind of eyeballing. So for the Air Force, I do IT administration more, and it would be awesome to look at like site reliability engineering or potentially maybe software development, kind of keeping the horizon open. There's still quite a bit of time before I'm going to be applying, so we'll see.
Cool. So how did you hear about us, Jordan?
Actually, I went to a friend of a friend, knew someone who, I forget her title at, I think, Microsoft. And I went and talked to her, and where I work, most people can't conceptualize development. Everyone's working on A+ or Net+, and they're kind of focused on the administration realm. And one of the things that I'd really like to do is kind of just get into the circles and like talk to people about things and work on projects together, because it's a very different environment maintaining a network compared to project-based solution solutions, I guess. So yeah, I heard about you guys through the Meetup app. She recommended it, and she said this is a great place to meet people, you know?
Oh, cool. And I will say that, we currently have, and we have had in the past, a lot of veteran students. So I guess you fit in very nicely here. Um, but yeah, thank you, Jordan, for your introduction. And we hope that the workshop is very informative for you. And so, okay, so a couple of people are coming in. Brian, we're just giving quick introductions about ourselves and, what kind of intrigued us about the workshop, and just, kind of what our path and status is for joining the tech industry. If we're just kind of, if it's just, basic interest, or if we're already working in, just kind of like, some fun facts about yourself, things like that. So if you'd like to unmute your mic, feel free to go ahead. That's okay. Bella, would you like to give a quick introduction about yourself? We're just going around, um, just giving quick introductions, like the slide says, that Ruby has up. Just some fun facts about yourself and
Sorry, I
your
joined
path in
late.
tech.
I had joined the other link, which I saw in the meetup. Yeah, so my name is Bela. I have a master's degree in physics. I've been working in the biotech industry for around SAS and SQL coding and a little bit of application support. Reason for attending today's workshop, I've been learning Python on my own, and I've been unsure about whether I would. So I wanted to join this class and see. Fun fact about myself. Can't think of it anything at the moment. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you here, and we hope that the workshop is very fun and informative for you as well. So
Thank
as
you.
I mentioned to everyone before we do the introductions, we welcome you all to, unmute your mic and speak up freely as you wish, whether it's on the chat or verbally. That's completely fine. Like, we want you guys to ask questions and engage. So, think of this as just kind of like we're all just, friends on a call. Don't be intimidated. Any questions are good. Yeah, we want to foster that kind of environment while we have this workshop. But anyways, I'll hand it off to Ruby, and she will go ahead and start with her presentation.
Okay. So first off, why learn C sharp? So right now, currently, C sharp is one of the sort of hot languages in the tech industry. It's sort of every company is trying to get C sharp developers because they are trying to implement more C sharp applications. Sharp is one of the most versatile programming languages. And the other thing about C sharp I want to mention is, so the thing about coding languages, it's kind of like if you know American English and you go to like the UK, you'll be able to understand like, how they speak, what their sort of languages, right? So it's kind of like that with coding languages. Once you know one language, it's really easy to pick up other languages. So in the sense that if you learn C sharp, it's super easy to pick up other languages such as Python, Java, um, and C++, C, all of those different types of languages. So it's a very versatile programming language in the sense that it's a high level language. So it does sort of give you a good idea of the other languages. And that's going to be helpful because when you go into industry and you get a job, a lot of times in your job, you're not just going to be doing that specific task, right? You're going to be doing a lot of things. They'll bump you into a lot of different projects, a lot of different places. And the more versatile you are, the more knowledge you know, the more opportunities you get. Okay. And then along with C sharp, mainly C sharp is used to build window client applications and web and mobile apps. So I think you guys kind of know that right now app development is super hot and all the companies are trying to get into app development, maintain their apps, maintain their applications and mobile apps, and etc. Okay. And there's a huge demand in the job market, which I will get into more later. So why is it important? Like I said, it's highly versatile. So you can use C# to create a ton of projects. So a lot of cloud-based services and enterprise software is made up of C#. And that's kind of where tech is at right now. Everyone's getting into the cloud. Everyone's getting into Azure. So right now it's just really in demand. Game development is really popular with C#. One of the biggest platforms where we create games, which is called Unity, that's kind of used with C#. And many of the games, almost I would say 95% of the games that you have ever played or heard of are scripted using C#. Okay, so I have a lot of students who are really intrigued and interested in game development, and C# is a place to start with that. Okay. Like I said, being fluent in C# will make learning the others a breeze. So other C-type languages like C, C++, and Java, those three are sort of the mainstream languages along with C#. C# is very similar to them. So once you know C#, it's very easy to pick up the other languages. And it kind of helps on the job when, you're given training, and usually with training, you're given 2 weeks to a month. So if you have some prior knowledge, it's a lot easier to do your job and stay, sort of be intact with your other employees, and get the job done. So that's always helpful. And then the other thing about C#, it's fairly simple to digest. So I've seen a lot of students who come in with no coding experience at all, and I've taught both Java and C# in the past, and I've seen that with Java and C++, sometimes it can be difficult to get a grasp of, but I've seen with C#, since it's a high-level language, it's a lot more simpler to get the hang of it. So it's nice to sort of have that buffer where you're not just jumping into a full-on Java C++ type of language, but you have that buffer to put you in between them. So C# I would say is fairly simple to digest. It's not a super difficult language to understand and get the grasp of.
Oh, so Ruby, sorry, one sec. So Bella says that the voice is breaking intermittently. Is that an issue for everyone? For me, it's fine. I just want to make sure that everyone else is okay as well.
I was able to hear you fine, guys, but before that, I was
Okay. Brian Jordan.
able to hear for some time, and then again the voice starts and then break and then back.
Okay. I was able to hear fine. Brian Jordan, is it good or? Okay. So Ruby, why don't you go ahead and then like Bella, if anything kind of if any issue persists, okay, so Jordan says you sound fine. So if there continues to be an issue, Bella, try try exiting and rejoining. That sometimes helps. If not, just message on the chat and we'll try to fix it for you. Sorry about that.
Okay. Am I good to continue?
Sure, go ahead, Ruby.
Okay. And if you guys have questions like in between slides, just let me know. So feel free to unmute, or you can just post them in the chat and Fayaz will share your question out. But yeah, feel free to stop me in between. Okay, so yeah, like I said, C# is it's a fairly simple language to digest. I know a lot of people that haven't had coding experience before. Coding can seem kind of scary. It can seem kind of intimidating, especially, coding has that stereotype where it's difficult, it's hard. And with C#, I've seen that personally, it's not as hard to digest. So it shouldn't be, for most students, they kind of get it pretty quickly. So it's nice when you're starting off and you're not just pounded with Java or C++. That's a super difficult language. Okay. So job statistics. So currently, there are over 100,000 job openings for developers. Okay, so this is developers across the board. So Java developers, C++ developers, cloud developers, any type of developer. And C# is actually a qualification for 90% of these openings. Okay. So even though there's so many openings for these types of jobs and for developers, there's not enough qualified people. So a lot of these stay open, and that's why the development industry has such a high demand. So you get paid, a pretty high salary compared to other industries. It's because there's a lot of openings, but there's not enough people, or there's not qualified people. Okay. And when I say qualified people, it's not that, you know the language and you get the job. You actually have to know the language pretty well, and you have to know how to solve the problems that they're giving you. And so that's kind of the difference between a boot camp and sort of, if you take it at a regular college or university level, where a boot camp mainly focuses on getting you ready for industry. They're getting you ready for an actual job in the real world. Whereas with a university or college, they're more focusing on the theory of things. They're more focusing on sort of like, hey, this is why this happens. This is the history of this. And a lot of people realize that once they're done with the university, they're not exactly industry ready. Okay. And then in 2021, we need more developers than ever, especially in COVID. So in COVID, as you guys all know, a lot of people, they lost their jobs, a lot of businesses got shut down. But with tech industry and with people who are working tech jobs, they were one of the few industries that actually started hiring more people. So it's not that they just kept their jobs, but they actually started hiring more people. And because they were able to work remotely, so work from home or work from, all you need is a laptop and an internet connection, they were able to hire a lot more people. They were able to keep jobs in their businesses, and they were actually able to develop more and push more out into the world to make more profit. So the tech industry is one of the industries that even in COVID, they were able to pull their ground. Okay. And then from 2019 to 2029, there's actually a 22% growth rate. So even though we have all of these jobs that are open, we're actually going to get more jobs that are going to be open, just because of the demand in the tech industry, since the world is now moving towards a technology sort of based world. And then the salary, so obviously state by state it varies, but for Washington State, the base pay is 80K. So compared to other job industries, a lot of other job industries, they start out about 40 to 60K. But in Washington State, for tech jobs, the entry level would be 80K. And then obviously as you go up, so if you apply for junior level, senior level, it goes up from there. And with base pay, you also have, your bonus, you have different things that come along with your base pay, and obviously compares on different companies. So the top 5 companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook will pay a lot more than this. Like general companies, startup companies, it just depends on what it is. But the base pay in Washington, the average pay would be 80K. Okay. Companies who hire C# developers. So almost every company has positions for C# developers. Okay, any tech company, and honestly, it doesn't even have to be a tech company, because every company has some sort of technological aspect within it. So a developer is needed with any company, and most of these companies are looking for C# developers. Okay, and there's a lot of startups nowadays as well. And with startups, a lot of people have this impression that, startups are brand new, they're not going to pay as well. Actually, I've seen recently that startups pay more sometimes than companies that are well off, just because startups, they really want to push their company out there, and they really need people who are the best of the best, and they really need people who are willing to put in the work. So they're actually willing to pay a lot more sometimes than companies that are well off, because companies that are well off, they have a lot more candidates, right? Everyone wants to work for those companies. But startups that, are not, they're brand new, or they're trying to get the word out, they want people who they want people to actually build their software. So they're willing to pay whatever it takes to push their company out into the market. So a lot of times I see students, once they're done, they're like, oh, I want to only apply to the major companies. I would say don't have that mindset. Try to apply to startups as well, because sometimes you might find that you will be happier at a startup than a well-off company. But just put your name out there. Don't be scared to put your name out there. And then job titles that students can apply for. So after taking this specific boot camp, we will actually get you ready for 4 different types of job roles. So you can apply to be an SDET, which is a software development engineer and test, because we do cover unit testing in this specific course. And then you can apply to be a software developer or a software engineer, or you can apply to be a technical analyst. So those are the 4 roles that sort of you will be prepared for the interviews and sort of for the actual job. And then one thing I do want to mention is that in the tech industry, interviews are a little different in the sense that, you know, with other industries, it's more like they ask you a few questions like, what is your weakness? What is your strength? Why do you want to work for us? And then you kind of get the job or you don't. In the tech industry, it's a little bit different. In the tech industry, they will ask you those questions, but they will also give you kind of like an exam, and an exam in the sense that it's not like a piece of paper and they say fill it out. It's more of like, you know, they'll put you in a conference room with a few people that work at that company, and they're sort of just ask you questions like technical questions. So things that you covered in this class, things about C#. And if you can answer them, great, you pretty much got the job. And if you don't answer them or you can't answer them sort of correctly, you sort of don't get the job. So that's kind of why there's so many openings for C# developers and developers in general. But because people are not prepared to answer those specific questions, they don't know how to answer them, it kind of nobody really gets the job. It kind of stays open because there's not qualified people. So in this course, we actually do about 2 weeks of interview sessions. So we talk about behavioral interviews, we get your resume ready, we get your cover letter ready, your LinkedIn, we talk about technical interviews. You actually go through a live session. So we actually put you in a live session of a technical interview so you can get some practice on that. Technical interview questions are a little bit different than what you would expect, so we kind of go through that. But we really get you ready for industry. We really get you ready where once you complete the course, you're ready to apply for jobs, you're ready to do interviews. Okay. So skills combo, what do you need? So you want to know a little bit of math. I'm not saying that you need to know calculus or you need to know like really high level math, but just basic math is something that you should know. Problem solving skills. You want to be a person that likes to problem solve, and you want to have sort of skills where you can think about a problem and sort of pick it apart and see if you can find solutions. And we talk about that in the course, sort of how do you do that? How do you take a problem and break it apart? Organizational and time management skills. So you want to be organized. Accuracy and attention to detail. So coding is a very sensitive topic, meaning that the smallest thing can break your code. The smallest thing can sort of be the issue where you're not able to get to the solution. So you want to be a person that is always accurate and you're paying attention to detail. You want to have an understanding of the latest trends and in the role in their commercial environment. So that means that every company is different. Every company has different trends, and trends come in and out, and they change throughout the seasons. So technical trends always are changing. So you want to be a person that sort of knows the technical trends, are up to date with them, and we'll talk about them in the course. Teamwork skills, so you want to be a team player. Definitely development is not something that you do on your own. You're working with people a lot, you're working with your team, you're close with your team, so you want to be able to get along with a team and work well with a team. And then self-development skills. So you want to keep up to date with fast-changing trends. Technology is always changing, so there's always something to learn. It's never a boring industry. Every day when you go in, there's something new, and every project that you change, there's always something different. Okay. So just a little bit about boot camps versus college. So the main thing here is the price tag and sort of the time spent. So with an actual degree, there's a lot more time, right? You have to take classes that are sort of irrelevant to your actual job, meaning like you have to take those kind of filler classes. So like English classes and other classes to sort of make you a well-rounded person. Whereas with the boot camp, it's more focused. It's like, this is the job I want, this is the job I need, and I just want the information that I actually will use. Okay. The other thing is the price tag. So the price tag for an actual university or college is a lot higher than the price tag for a boot camp. And at the end of the day, if you guys end up in the same place, sometimes it makes more sense to do a boot camp. Okay. A lot of times with a university degree or college degree, people go straight from high school, and then with the boot camp, we'll find a lot of students who they have prior education, but they're sort of looking to change their field or to get into something new. Okay. And then both if you have a degree or you go to boot camp, we've seen that both people sort of end up at the same job and they sort of end up in the same companies. We've seen people from boot camps end up in the top 5 companies. We've seen people in boot camps end up in startups. It's really, we've seen them end up in all different places. So yeah. And then talking about the curriculum. So there's a little bit of a difference between the curriculum with a university and college compared to an actual boot camp. So with the boot camp, it's really accelerated, meaning that we teach you what you need to know, focusing on sort of industry standards within a small time frame, compared to a college or university where they'll sort of stretch it out. Okay. You'll sort of have multiple classes across multiple years, and usually in a boot camp, it's a few months. The other thing with the boot camp is that we have iterative curriculums. So you'll see that different professors or different instructors will teach something differently, even though it's the same content. It'll be taught differently according to their industry experience compared to a university or college where you kind of have set curriculums. They sort of give you a book and they say, here, this is what you need to teach your students, and this is how you teach it. Okay. With the boot camp, we have smaller classes, so there's a lot more, it gets a lot more personal. You get to know your peers a lot more personally, the instructor a lot more personally, and it's vice versa. With the university or college, there's a lot of people in your class. Sometimes it's more of just like understand the content, complete the exam, and then go on to the next class. Okay, so with the boot camp, you kind of get a lot more networking, you get to know a lot more people. And you sort of make those personal relationships. And a lot of time I've heard from students in a boot camp that they actually like making those personal relationships, because you'll find in a boot camp that you're not going to be the only one. There's a lot of people that have similar background experiences, or they're going to a similar route. And it's kind of nice to have someone that is going through the same thing that you're going through. Okay. And a lot of times networking is one of the best ways to get a job, especially in the tech industry. So I've seen a lot of students where, one person got a job at a company and they've referred another student of theirs and said, hey, we took the same boot camp together. And, we're coming from the same background experience. I know this person personally, and, they're a really hard worker. And from there, they've gotten a job. So yeah. Like I said, it's less expensive to take a boot camp compared to a college or university. And then the other thing about a boot camp is, since we are preparing you for industry, we kind of put you in that industry realm of things, meaning that since it's a small class, we're able to operate as if we were a team, just like in a company. Whereas in a university or college, it's kind of like you're on your own, or maybe you have a buddy, but that's about it. So whenever we complete assignments in the boot camp, whenever we sort of work on homework assignments, we always operate like a team, just as you would in industry. Okay. And then in boot camps, we have hands-on learning, and we don't focus more on theory of things. So we don't focus on like the theory and the history of things. We kind of focus on, hey, this is what you need for the interview. This is what you need for the job. Master it, and then get the job. Whereas with university and colleges, they kind of spend more time on saying, this is the history of things, the theory of things. You need to understand like why this happened. And then it mainly opens doors for like going into higher education compared to industry. So it's just a different focus. And then in a boot camp, you kind of have mentor support. So even though I'm the instructor, I operate more as mentor compared to university or colleges. You kind of have like TA or like teaching assistant or professor support. So it's just a little bit of a different type of support system. Okay. Any questions so far about anything I presented? Okay. So what makes an ideal student? So the first thing is you need to be interested in C# and Azure. So coding is something where it's not that, if you're not interested, but you're just going in it for the money, or you're going in it for some other reason other than being interested, you're going to make it. That's not true. Coding is not easy, okay? It's not, it's not rocket science, but at the same time, it's not something that is you can kind of like pass by with it or be like a passive learner. It's something where you have to have a passion for it. You have to be interested in it. Okay. You actually have to have a feeling that you want to learn it, you want to excel at it. Okay. The other thing about coding and the tech industry is that, like I said, technology is always changing. So if you're a person that, you like to do the same thing every single day, you like to stay within your comfort zone, I would say that the tech industry might be a little rough for you, because every time that you change a project, and you change a project maybe every month, every 3 months, sometimes you change a project every week. It just depends on the company. Something is always new within the project. Maybe it's a new application, maybe it's a new trend, maybe it's a new way the team operates. But you have to be able to go out of your comfort zone. You have to be willing to learn, and you have to like to learn new things. Okay. The other thing that makes an ideal student is having little to no knowledge of C# and Azure. So we don't expect that you guys know any coding at all. That's kind of the expectation. However, if you do know a little bit of coding in a different language, that's fine. If you have a little bit of C# experience, that's okay. But yeah, we don't expect that you have any type of prereq to sort of join this class. You like to problem solve, so coding is all about problem solving. It's all about taking apart a problem and picking it piece by piece and seeing which parts you can solve, and sort of distributing it amongst your team members. You like challenges, so like I said, if you're a person who kind of likes to do the same thing every day or doesn't like to go out of your comfort zone, then the development field might not be for you. You're a hard worker, you're motivated and responsible. So the tech industry, you also have to be self-motivated. No one is sort of going to hold your hand and walk you through stuff when you're at a job. No one is sort of going to tell you, hey, did you complete this? No one's going to be behind your back. It's sort of like we give you a task and we expect you to be motivated to finish it. If you need help, you speak up about it. No one's going to keep on asking you, hey, are you okay? Do you need help? So there's a lot of self-motivation. You have to be a hard worker. And then obviously the last thing is that you need to be available to meet during the class sessions. So we meet every Wednesday and Saturday. Wednesdays we meet at 6 to 9, and then Saturday we meet 1 to 4. Okay. What do we cover? So in the class, so it's a 20-week course, and we cover object-oriented programming. We cover, so we do a deep dive into C#. So we don't just touch the surface, but we get you ready for, we don't get you ready for entry level. We actually get you ready for junior level, so the second level job roles. So once you finish the course, you can actually go ahead and straight apply to a junior level. And then we do test-driven development, so that's kind of where the role comes in, where you can apply for a tester. And then we do cloud computing and Azure. We talk about technical and behavioral interview roles and sort of how to prepare for that. We talk about Azure and app data, and then professional development is also what we talk about. So like resume building, cover letters, things like that. Okay. Any questions on what we cover or sort of what makes an ideal student? Anyone have any questions at all? Okay. So with the cohort that we just completed, I kind of wanted to show you a few assignments, not assignments, but capstones of what the students completed. So with the 20-week course, the expectation is that at the end of the course, so the very last class, we have a capstone presentation. So what a capstone is basically is everything you've learned, you kind of put it together and you show the class, hey, this is what I made. And you kind of get 2 weeks to complete this from start to finish. And obviously, like, I'm there to help you guys if you're stuck or anything. But within the last 2 weeks, you get time to finish everything that you've learned. Okay, so you pick the idea yourself, you come up with your capstone idea yourself, and then it's a full-on project that you start and you finish completely. So this is one student's capstone that they did. So since C# is a gaming language, it's very popular in the gaming industry, the student was really interested in gaming. So she created a game, and let me make this bigger so you guys can see. Okay, so what this is this is an ageist game. So people who are heavy gamers, you might recognize this. But basically, it's just like a regular like villain type of game that she made. So here's her platform that she made it. She has her characters. She has like different funky colors with the characters. She has her sort of environment. And then it's a game where, you know, you can use the keyboard to move around, etc. So it's a full-on game which she made with C#. So yeah, and then the other student, let's see if I can make this one bigger. So this is a timer, basically. So this student made a timing sort of scheduler type of thing where, I don't know if you guys can see it, it's pretty small, but basically what it says is, you know, would you like to create a note? Would you like to create a reminder? Would you like to create an alarm? And basically you can put different notes, different alarms, different types of reminders in here, and then it'll actually, once that specific date and time comes, it'll pop up on your computer and make an alarming noise. So it was a pretty cool project that the student completed. And this was all with C#. So, and this was all created within the last 2 weeks of the class. So this was their capstone project. The other thing about this capstone project is that this is something that you can put on your resume that is a project that you completed on your own. And a lot of tech companies, they like to see personal projects being completed because it shows two things. The first thing is that you're actually passionate about coding, which means that you're passionate about learning, and you can show your knowledge, that everything you write on your resume that, hey, I know this and I know that, you can show it and say, hey, I actually do know this stuff. I created this, and you can talk about this in your interview. Especially if you don't have like prior experience within the tech industry, this is a great way to actually show what you know instead of saying that I know this and that. The second thing is that it kind of puts you in line with your competition. So with the other people that are applying for that job, a lot of students that come from universities or colleges, they always have personal projects. So it kind of puts you in the same boat as them, saying that, hey, even if they have it, we have personal projects too. So they don't have a one-up against you. Okay. The class structure, so sort of how does the class run every Wednesday and Saturday? So it's a 3-hour class each day, and we start off with attendance, and then we do a quick recap of what we learned last lecture. And then we do a lecture, so basically like a PowerPoint like I'm showing today. So we'll do probably an hour of just lecturing. So there's a PowerPoint, so if you want to take notes, you can. Otherwise, the PowerPoint is provided to you, so you can go back and revisit them. And then I do a live demo, which means that whatever I presented in the PowerPoint, I will go in and I will actually show you guys how it's done. And then once I do that, I'll give you time to practice with amongst yourselves. So practice with your teammates, practice amongst yourselves, sort of get your feet wet. And then once we do that, I have a share out session. So with the share out session, we just go through everyone and you sort of show us what you did. It's not that you have to complete, you know, everything within that specific time, but sort of just share out what you did, what you got completed, what your challenges were. If you had questions, sort of what were they? And the reason we do this is because a lot of times you're not the only one that's confused, or you're not the only one that had a question. Someone else in the class is going to be in the same boat as you, so you kind of get to learn from others and say, oh, okay, this person solved it this way, maybe I should do that. And then the last thing we have is a discussion. So we kind of just discuss what we learned in the class, how you're going to use it going forward, how does it help you, etc. And this just kind of gives you ideas about like, okay, this is what other people are doing. So you kind of get to learn from other people and hear what they have to say. So that's kind of basically what we will do in the 3-hour session. And then obviously at the end of the course, you will have your completed capstone project. You'll also have an updated resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn that's based to current industry standards. And then you'll have your behavioral and technical interview prep, and you would have gone through a behavioral and technical interview like module, like a live session. Okay. And then the last thing I want to show you guys is I want to go through quickly one of the lectures that, so it's one of the later lectures, so it's lecture 23. So it's kind of the halfway mark. We have a total of 40 lectures. So I kind of want to go through and show you guys how we get you ready for an SDET job, so a software development engineer and test. So how we go through unit testing, as well as the coding aspect, so a software development engineer type of role. And the other thing I want to mention is that even though we get you ready for unit testing, there's a lot more roles in testing than just an SDET. There's a quality assurance, there's a tester, just straight up like a tester, C# tester. So there's a lot of different role calling, but generally the main aspect is unit testing. And a lot of times I've seen students that they have these 3 skills. So let me go back to here. So they have these 3 skills. So these are 3 kind of like umbrella terms. And what I've seen them do is just on Google, they'll write testing jobs. And there'll be so many different roles because every company has different name calling for those roles. And they'll just be able to apply to so many different roles because they have these umbrella skills and they use these umbrella terms. So that kind of just makes you, it kind of gives you more job openings. Okay, so going on to Visual Studio. So this is Visual Studio. If you've never seen it before, this is where we do our coding, and this is actually what a lot of companies use as well. So you'll be familiar when you get to your job that, okay, I've used this in my boot camp, so I kind of know what to do. The other thing about this is actually a skill. So this application, you can actually list it on your resume under skills and say, I'm, fluent with Visual Studio. Okay, so this is the application we use to code. I know a lot of you will not understand kind of what's on the screen. So, but I kind of just wanted to show you guys that different things that we go over that is kind of industry standard, so that when you're doing your interviews and when you get to your job, you're not lost, but you kind of have this backbone of like, I have this prior knowledge that I did. Okay, so we talk about sort of syntax, we talk about good coding practices, so industry coding practices. And one thing I want to know is that industry coding practices are different than coding practices that you would learn at a university or college. So universities and colleges, those are called academic coding practices, and then industry has their own. So we go over industry coding practices. So some of this is going to be industry coding practices. And then we talk about sort of some of the main things that you'll do in interviews, so some of the main concepts. And then once we do any type of coding, so whatever is shown on the screen here right now, this is what sort of the developer would do, like any type of software developer. And then once the software developer sort of does all of this, they will hand it off to the unit tester. So either a software developer in test, or the quality assurance tester, or any type of testing role. So they'll hand it off to them. And once they hand it off to them, then we kind of go through and we sort of show you that, okay, if you are a tester, this is what you would be doing. And we give you practice with both. So in this way, you kind of get practice with being a tester as well as a developer. And you also understand the flow of things, meaning that how in a company does each team handle what? Because when you're in a company, it's not one team that handles everything. There's different teams that handle different things. So if you have a broad idea, like an overhead of, okay, first this team is going to do something and then it's going to hand off to this other team, you have an idea of what's going to be handed off to you and sort of how a company flows. So that's kind of what we do. So this would be all across a few different lectures, but you get an idea of the practice. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the homework. So we have a few homework assignments every few weeks, and basically they just test they kind of just test what the different topics we talked about were. So they kind of test one by one, meaning that, if we talked about development, you'll be tested or you'll be working on development questions. And then if we talked about like unit testing, you'll be working on unit testing questions. And the homework is always pretty collaborative, meaning that, you're never expected to just be given an assignment and say, here, complete it yourself and then turn it in. A lot of times you'll see that a lot of students will contact each other and say, hey, let's set up a time to work on this together. Let's go through it and let's see what we understand from it. And we talk about the homework in class a lot too. So if you're confused or anything, I see a lot of students that come to class and say, hey, we got this far, but we're kind of confused now. What should we do? And then I'll kind of walk through and say, this is sort of how you complete it. So there's a lot of teamwork here, which is different than I would say a university or college, because personally, so when I was in university or college, we never did that. It was always like you're on your own, you have to finish the assignment on your own. Everyone's doing their own thing. And when I got to industry, I saw that it's completely different. It's so collaborative. Everyone is willing to help each other. And that's kind of how we lead this boot camp, where everyone is helping each other so that when you get to industry, you're not in shock. You're kind of like, okay, I'm expecting what is happening here because that's how I did my boot camp. But yeah, so basically that was the realm of my presentation. My main point here is that, with this boot camp, we really focus on industry standards, and we really focus on getting you ready for a job straight after you complete it. So yeah, that's all I had. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. But yeah.
Awesome. So thank you very much, Ruby. I just wanted to kind of jump in here for a second. I know a lot of people, when we started, there were only a couple of people in the meeting. But for those of you who weren't here at the start, that's completely fine. But we just kind of we did like a quick introduction at the beginning where we just kind of went around and everyone just kind of said a little bit about themselves and what kind of interests them about the tech industry, or, whether they're working in the tech industry currently. So if you guys could go ahead real quick, just a real quick introduction, unmute your mic, and just say a few words about yourself. It really just help us get acquainted and help us get to, know all of us a little bit better. Atasha, did you unmute your mic?
I did. Sorry, I didn't know if you wanted me to start right away. My
Sure,
name
go
is Tasha. I live in a very rural part of Pennsylvania, and my majority of exposure to programming was back in 2003 with C++ on in high school, and I have a wildlife degree in management and technologies that I really hope to supplement with this program. And I would like to head in the direction of green technologies or something along those lines.
Okay, cool. And how did you hear about SKILLSPIRE?
An app called Skill Up. It basically found out what you were interested in and recommended programs that might help you get there.
Awesome. Cool. Well, it's great to have you here.
Thanks.
Okay. Who would like to go next? Vani, would you like to introduce yourself? Okay, that's completely fine. Yeah, so as Ruby said, if anyone has any questions, we're more than welcome you to go ahead and ask. Please feel free to ask anything and everything. That's really, honestly, one of the main purposes of this workshop is to kind of, get all of your pain points and anything that's on your mind. You have an industry expert, Ruby, here to answer anything. So please feel free to go ahead and ask questions.
I actually have a question. I
Sure.
was planning on getting a new computer because I've needed one for years, but this was a good excuse. Is there anything, any requirements that I should consider for like processing speeds, like graphics card? Are we going to be doing 3D modeling of any sort, or?
No, I mean, both Windows and Mac work fine. You can have the application work on both. So you don't need anything like super duper, like, high tech or anything, just your average everyday computer. Like I personally use a MacBook Air, but I've seen like I have students that use Windows. I have students that use Chromebooks. It doesn't matter as long as it's just a normal basic computer.
Okay, thank you.
Whoa.
Sorry, Bella, I think, did you have a question as well?
Yes, I had a quick question. So from this introduction that happened about this class, I got to know that C# is predominantly used in the gaming industry. That's something I didn't know. I just wanted to know if there are any other industry that C# is used. I mean, is it once you learn C#, do you expect to just get into gaming industry, or it can be any other place as well?
No, so C sharp, so it is, so I was saying that C sharp in the gaming industry is like one of the main languages that they use, but in every company, there's C sharp developers. So C sharp is used for any type of window client application building, any cloud services type of building, and even just mobile apps in general is where C sharp is used. So C sharp in almost every single company, there's a C sharp developer role. But I was saying that in the gaming industry, that's what the gaming industry is about. Like if you were to get in the gaming industry, it's only C sharp. But like in other industries, you have Java, you have C sharp, you have C++, C++. You have different types of coding languages. So it's not only just the gaming industry, it's almost every single company uses C sharp.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to ask any questions? I know we had a couple people who just joined. Any questions that you'd like to ask Ruby or any of us? Okay. So I do have one question actually, Ruby. Maybe this might be on the minds of some of the people who are here, but so with the cohort that just ended, the C sharp cohort, so what percentage of the people who took the class would you say were, I guess, complete like raw beginners, and what percentage were not? And the people who were kind of coming in completely fresh, like how did they take to learning C sharp? How was the process for them in terms of difficulty, and throughout the 20 weeks, how did it go?
Yeah. So we had so let me think. So we had a few students who never coded before in their life at all. So coding was completely new to them. They didn't know the first thing about coding. And then we had students who did a little bit of coding before, but then they weren't really fluent in it. And then we had students who were completely fluent in another coding language. So I would say that the students that never had any experience before, they actually picked it up really well. And this student here, actually, I can even show you her project. This one here that did the sort of time scheduling app with the notes, that was one of the students who didn't have any prior coding experience at all. And she actually came from a different field. She was a high school teacher. So she was a high school teacher for biology. So it was a completely different type of thing for her, but she did really well. And at the end of the 20 weeks, she was able to complete a pretty full-on capstone project. So I would say that people that don't have any experience at all, this is a class that's structured for them to sort of succeed in. And it's not something that, they have to put in the extra effort or they'll fall behind. It's something that they can go along with as the lectures progress.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Jordan has a question. So he says he's working on learning about constructors and methods in C# right now, and that he's curious about how he can test constructors.
Like unit testing or just testing it in general? Because there's two different types of things. So with unit testing, it's more of like you want to have you want to have methods, you want to have some basic code there. You want to have like at least the bare bones of the code there. But if you're just curious on how to test constructors, you can create an object and then you can pull different things from the object, and then from there you can see if your constructor is working properly or not.
Jordan, does that answer your question? So, Austin is asking, how is Azure used with C#?
So with Azure, we spend about 2 weeks on Azure and we kind of just go onto the surface level of Azure. So we don't go super deep. Our main focus is C sharp, but we kind of just give you enough knowledge where you kind of get like the 101 of Azure. And then from there, we have like practice problems that you can do on your own to sort of get you more in depth. But within the specific class time, we just give you like a 101 of what Azure is and give you a little bit time to practice to sort of get you comfortable with Azure, but we don't give you like a deep dive in it.
Okay, so Jordan followed up. He said he'll keep digging into it. He said that conceptually he understands, but that it's frustrating to work on.
Okay.
Okay. And I would like to remind everyone to please put your email into the chat, and we'll send you the recording as soon as the event is over, and we'll keep you up to date on future workshops as well. So, yeah. Okay. Any other questions, guys? So, okay, Awesome. That's a good question. I guess this is more for me and Yasmin. Do you offer job placement? Yes, absolutely. So we have like dedicated team members who basically that's their sole responsibility is job placement, career development, and they're the ones who once you're kind of midway through the course, they'll kind of reach out to you and they'll start doing things like optimizing your LinkedIn and building your resume, and you'll start polishing up your technical interview skills as you go along. And then, after the course, of course, once you've built your project and you're kind of in that mode where you have your certificate and you're kind of job ready, we'll be actively, looking, helping you to find a job, whether it's with companies that we have partnerships with, or branching out. We really don't stop. The goal is ultimately to get you a job. So we have had students who've gotten jobs like straight out, and we've had students who, for whom it's taken a bit longer. But as long as you're working hard in the course and then actively seeking opportunities. Sometimes, we mentioned the big companies, but sometimes it's better to start small and just kind of build up, and you can work up to those bigger opportunities, maybe a year or 2 or 5 years down the line. So, yeah, I would say we absolutely do, but we don't make guarantees as to like which companies or like a particular salary. We don't make promises. All we do guarantee you is that we'll do everything in our power to help you with job placement. I hope that answers your question, Asim. Okay, so I guess this question is better for you, Ruby. So he says, Asim asks, how many hours of studying is recommended on a weekly basis?
So we have 6 hours of lecture within the week, and then usually I've seen students spend around, I would say, 4 to 10 hours throughout the week of studying, and that just depends on sort of your expertise and how well you're digesting the information. But 4 to 10 hours, I would say, is a good average. And obviously, some weeks will be harder than others just because of the content. But 4 to 10 hours, I would say, is the average. So per week. So I would say like maybe an hour a day or maybe 2 hours. And one thing I would like to know actually is that it's definitely doable if you have a job. Most of our students, I think actually all of our students, they have like full-time jobs, like 40 hours a week jobs that they do, and they're still able to handle the class pretty well. It's not like overwhelming or anything. So I just want to put that out there.
Oh, okay. So I'm kind of glad that Natasha asked this question. So, um, she says, what makes this boot camp different from other coding boot camps? Okay, so I think this is a question that I can kind of chime in on, then maybe Ruby as well, and Yasmin as well. I think it's all of us. But so, okay, from my perspective, when we look at other boot camps, so the boot camp itself, I don't know if you know this, but SKILLSPIRE was actually started with a mission to kind of revolutionize the tech industry in the sense that, Yasmin is, of course, the founder and CEO, and she started the company with the mission to get more underrepresented communities into the tech industry, people like women, minorities, refugees, immigrants. And so there is like a deeper mission rooted within the company itself. Aside from that, in terms of the actual like technical components of the school, um, we are significantly more affordable than other boot camps for the most part. So if you look, I mean, obviously we don't want to go into names and things like that, but a lot of other boot camps will charge anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000, and our courses are more in the range of around $3,000 to $8,000, depending on which course you choose. Um, we also cater our instruction towards people who, as Ruby just mentioned, who are already working full time. So the courses are all really structured for people who can't afford, to quit their job, because we realize that being able to just kind of put your life on pause and quit your job is it's a luxury that most people can't afford, because you have family to take care of and bills to pay, and we completely understand. We're not asking you to quit your job. You just have to put in all the work on the side as you go through the course. And then after that, Ruby, would you do you have any kind of points you'd want to mention as far as what differentiates us from other coding boot camps?
Yeah, so I would say so. One point I want to touch upon is that, kind of like what Fayaz said, a lot of other boot camps I've seen, they ask for like 20, 30 hours a week, or some of them ask for even 40 hours a week. And that's just sometimes not doable for people who have to keep their full-time jobs. And a lot of other boot camps as well, especially like coding boot camps or that focus on like C sharp or like any type of coding language, they actually take around like 7 to 10 months. Compared to like this course, which only takes 4 months, I believe, 4 to 5 months, 20 weeks. So we cover the same content and we get you ready, but it's just in a shorter amount of time. And I think that sometimes that's ideal for a lot of people who are trying to, get get everything rolling. So yeah, and the other thing I would say is that I've seen a lot of boot camps, they don't really have that mentor concept. They kind of have like, there's an instructor, they teach you, and then you kind of work with your team, or you work with the people around you. Whereas I see at SKILLSPIRE that we have a lot of mentorship available. And there's a lot of guidance, especially if you're new to this industry and you kind of want to get into it. So there's a lot of mentorship that happens compared to like, I'm your instructor, you're my student. So we're kind of like the same level in a sense. But yeah.
Yeah, so actually, I'm glad that you mentioned that last point about the mentorship. That's a huge point, actually, that we always kind of emphasize, which is that not only is like Ruby your instructor, your mentor, but also like even the higher ups of the company. Like for example, like Yasmin knows um, you know every student on pretty much a personal basis, and that's something that how many CEOs of companies actually make the effort to actually reach out to the students and speak with them and get to know them on a personal level. And then Terry, the career development person, she's also working with you one on one, and it's very kind of it's you're not just like we're not just like your instructors and like your people to go to at your school. We're like technically almost like your family. Like, you have us to kind of lean on, and you don't really get the same kind of support system. Like Ruby also mentioned in the class where students would after the course go to their company and recommend like people who they took the boot camp with in the past for a particular title or job. It's a very kind of family kind of environment, and the mentorship and guidance aspect is huge. Um, I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to point at other boot camps and say they're not doing anything. I'm just saying that, like, we just feel that we kind of go the extra mile in that regard specifically. And then also, in terms of, especially now during COVID, but even otherwise, one of the things that we do is we have live instruction. So, we don't just hand you a bunch of like pre-recorded lectures and assignments and homework and things like that, and just like expect you to learn it on yourself and then go to the teacher if you're struggling. Like this Microsoft Teams setup right now is actually what your class would be like. So like Ruby would be there as the instructor. You're free to interact with your classmates with Ruby. You're free to ask questions. Like you'll be discussing live. And then you can always, if you do miss a lecture for whatever reason, you can catch the recording or whatever. But you do, because we realized that, because of COVID, everyone has kind of switched from in-person learning to online, and some people still like a lot of people still like the in-person learning because of that hands-on, personal kind of touch, where they want to speak with the instructor one-on-one and actually see them and interact with them instead of interacting with just like a recorded video. And that's exactly what we're kind of sort of going after, is that sort of live instruction, with, even though it's online, you still have, literally, you're with the instructor and with your classmates as well. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Tasha. So Tasha says, I learn I learned really well hands-on and from other people by working together. Yeah, absolutely. I think learning from pre-recorded videos is possible, but I think for a lot of people, it just requires, it can get kind of monotonous and kind of dull, especially if you're new to something. So I think the feeding off of other people's energy and being with them like live definitely helps. So yeah. absolutely.
And just to sort of add on to that, I've gotten a lot of feedback from students where, I've heard like, hey, I tried to watch like YouTube videos before this class just to kind of get like a start, or, I've kind of like I've watched like pre-recorded videos and things like that. And I noticed like in my lectures, I have a lot of students that kind of stop me within the lecture and ask questions and get the help they need, compared to like watching a recorded video and then writing your questions down and then afterwards, finding someone to ask. So it's just a lot more easier to understand and digest the information when it's kind of in person, which is what I've heard from students. And the other thing about kind of the way we have it, where it's on MS Teams and you're able to ask questions, is that you kind of get that motivation. I feel like a lot of times when you're just watching a YouTube video, sometimes you can get distracted or like you're just not really motivated to do the work. But like when you're in an in-person kind of live session on MS Teams, you have an instructor there, you have your classmates there, you have like actual working assignments you need to complete, that you're going to be sharing out. So you kind of have that motivation within the 3 hours to really get the most out of it. Whereas like if it's just a YouTube video, you might be distracted, you might be doing something else, you might not feel that motivation to complete whatever the YouTube video or pre-recorded lecture is telling you to complete. You might just shrug it off. So yeah, that's kind of just, I wanted to share that with everyone.
Natasha says it's way easier to talk to someone there with you than digging through Google and YouTube results. Yep, absolutely. Yep. Awesome. So anyone else have any questions? Whether it's about the course or the industry in general, whatever you're curious about, feel free. Okay, so Asim, oh, good question. Asim asks, what job titles did graduates of this program, what job titles were graduates of this program able to attain? So I'll chime in for a second and then I'll hand it off to Ruby. But so the cohort actually just ended, Asim, or Ruby, is it about to end? I'm not sure. Is it?
Yeah, it just ended a few weeks back.
Yeah. So yeah, they would be right now like in that process, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Ruby?
Yeah, it just ended about 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, as of yet, I'm not sure that any of them have. Okay, so Yasmin says there was one student who did find a job from the C# course. So
yeah, we had one student. Yeah, we did have one student. She landed a job at Microsoft.
Okay, awesome. Actually, okay, but we don't know what the title is. Yep.
It was a software engineer. Yeah, she was one of my students. It was a software engineer at Microsoft.
Okay, cool. Cool. Awesome. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, I had a quick question too. So anyone who is confused between a full stack web development and the C# and Azure course, what would be your suggestion? How can one decide, or what is the difference? Is it just the language because full stack teaches Python? We can select that which is much easier than C#, or if someone was to decide between a C# Azure course versus the full stack course? Both are coding, both are development. What would be your suggestion if somebody has to choose between the two?
Yeah, so full stack development and C# development is pretty different. So full stack development, you kind of take control of the entire depth of a computer system application. So front end, back end, server side, client side, just kind of everything. And that's a different role. Like they're not interchangeable roles, like C# development and full stack. They're not interchangeable. They're just different. They're different focuses. And with the different focuses, obviously you have different job roles. Whereas C# development, it's just like like a regular software engineer, like a C# software engineer, like a Java software engineer. Whereas full stack, it's you're a different kind of development engineer. So both are engineers, both, both every single company, they have full stack developers, they have C# developers. It's just kind of like what you want to focus on more. Are you more interested in like the entire computer, so server side, client side, front end, back end, all of that, or are you more focused on like just focusing on a specific language, maybe like mobile app development, Windows client app development, cloud development, things like that. So it kind of just depends on what you want to go into and what you're more passionate about. But both are developers, both have high job demands in almost every single company, both kind of have the same salary rate. It just depends on what you like to do more, what you like to focus on more.
Thank you, Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Anyone else? Any questions? Okay, so if no one else has any questions, okay, so Awesome does have a question. Talk about cost and financing, please. Yeah, so um, Awesome. As far as the cost and financing goes, um, as far as the financing goes, we do offer. You can either pay upfront, the entire tuition upfront, and we also have monthly payment plans as well. So I believe it's 4 or 6 months, depending on which one you go with, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and as far as tuition goes, the course is $49.99 if you go with the 1 month, sorry, the one-time payment option, so the upfront payment option. And it is $54.99 if you go with the monthly payments. Yep. Does that answer your question, Austin? Did you have any other specific questions about tuition financing? Okay, cool. Yep. Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, so if no one else has any questions, that's pretty much what we have for you guys today. We hope that you guys really enjoyed the workshop and that it was informative for all of you. If you haven't already, please drop your email into the chat and we'll send you the recording for the workshop right after. And we'll also keep you up to date on future workshops just like this, as well as discounts, promotions, and future courses. So feel free to drop your email into the chat if you haven't already. Aside from that, thank you all very much for joining us on this Saturday morning/afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you, Ruby, very much for your extremely thorough and in-depth presentation and for answering everyone's questions as well. I found it informative, and I think everyone else did as well. So thank you very much, Ruby. And aside from that, thank you all very much once again. And I hope to see you all. Just to let you know, we do have another workshop actually next weekend. So next Saturday at the exact same time. And that one is about how to break into the tech industry. And if you are interested in that, drop your email into the chat and I will send you the sign up link for that workshop. So that one will be more of a kind of broad workshop where Yasmin and I will host that workshop and we'll talk about not one particular course or language, but more about how to break into the tech industry as a whole from, whether it's data analytics, cybersecurity, back end, front end, whatever it might be. So if you're interested in that workshop, please feel free to drop your email into the chat and I will send you the sign up link for that workshop. But that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you all found it very informative and very fun and engaging. And I hope you all have an excellent weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. Thank you, Fayaz.
Thank you, Bella. Thank you, Tasha.